So cool. Will you just jump in? Is that all right, Bob?
Yeah, come on.
Well, Jennie and I really have been looking forward. This is a close first step, but to be together for the first time happened at Sadie Robertson's wedding. It was such a pleasure to get to meet you finally.
Yes, I know. That was good. We're going to have you up to the lodge in Canada as soon as they open the border up.
I'm excited for you to meet our kids. They are outrageous, and we're definitely looking forward to getting your influence on our family.
Yes.
Even though from afar, we've already been definitely learning from your example.
Boy, likewise. I think we're all just ricocheting off each other in the most beautiful ways. And then you can also say sometimes people are ricocheting off each other in difficult ways.
Yeah.
And so that idea of being a worldwide family of friends, and we're all just making our way forward and listening to each other, and more student, less teacher.
That's it.
Oh, I love
Bob,
that.
I don't know anybody that I've ever met who wears more hats. And of course, ironically, you usually are wearing the same hat. But I mean, your life is exhausting from afar, but you don't come across to me as someone who's exhausted. So how do you balance a pace that is so dizzying, but come across refreshed? I mean, you seem to me, every time I see you listen or listen to you, you sound like a guy who's just coming back from a long sabbatical. And yet usually yesterday's workload would crush the normal person.
One thing that's helpful, I have the memory of a goldfish. And so I just don't remember whatever was behind, but I have a long range radar in front. So that would be the hallmark of a 7. You're just like constantly looking towards the horizon and thinking what's possible, like what might happen, like living with anticipation. I was out at this, I'm talking to you from this place outside of San Diego, and there's this dog that comes running at me in the middle of the night. I'm like mowing the lawn on this sit on top lawnmower. It's 9 p.m. Can't even see the grass, but I make out the shadow of this huge dog running at me and barking really loud. And so I just assume I'm going to make a new friend here. Now, some other people might see that dog running at them and seeing like, oh, it's going to bite me. But I was thinking, even if that happened, I'd have a great story. There was the time I was mowing the lawn. And so sometimes not being afraid of the things that are a little bit fuzzy around the edge. Like, I don't need absolute clarity on very many things. Give me clarity on Jesus, and then the rest can be fuzzy. So I just want to be crystal clear on the Jesus part, and then the rest, I just feel like this is the adventure.
You mentioned the memory of a goldfish. Okay, so there's a verse in the Bible of like a woman, forgets the pain of childbirth because she's so happy a child's come into the world. If that didn't exist in the woman's biology, every woman would have approximately one baby, and the human race would probably be wiped out.
Yes.
Seems like what you're describing is you find the joy that sort of overshadows and eclipses any of the downsides of the difficulty of pace or.
Yeah, so it can come across sometimes to the uninformed as out of touch, but actually you're just very strategic. I'm not just going to spend a lot of time looking at the rearview mirror. I've got one in my car and you do in yours, but every time I look at that rearview mirror, I think that's for combing your hair. So I'm thinking amazing. Forward, not backwards.
Okay, so
wow.
Honestly, from afar, if I'm just able to be completely transparent and candid, you are one of the more intimidating people to me I've ever talked to.
Bro,
and
here's the intimidating vibe?
You intimidate me not because of your lack of approachability, because your numbers in the back of your book, you're the most approachable person in the world. You intimidate me because of the fact that there isn't a defense mechanism. You're completely, seemingly comfortable with who you are, comfortable talking to a president as you are to a normal person on the street. I guess what I'm trying to say is how comfortable you are in your own skin makes me uncomfortable in mine, because it would be to me a goal of like almost like meeting Jesus. It's like you're so at peace with who you're called to be. That intimidates me.
You know, one of the things, you and I robbed the bank. We got these amazing wives, and Sweet Maria lives completely without heirs. So if there's something that you identify in me, I'm not just saying this, but you could trace that back to something you'd find in her. That's what happens beautifully in friendships and marriages, that we start seeing like our interpretation of them. We all speak at a lot of different things. And by the way, great job with that book, the one that's out. I'm so proud of it. I told Levi, I sat down, I very rarely do this. I read it from cover to cover.
No.
In one sitting. I just said, like, go.
Oh my gosh.
So, well done. Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Bob. Wow.
But one of the things that's reflected in our lives will be the people that we're around. And so I see attributes of Marie, and she lives completely without heirs.
Now, was that a process for you, though, of coming into that? Or I mean, you guys have been married for, what, 30 years? Yeah, I mean, how was there a day when there was more of an insecure version of Bob? Or did you really kind of start out this way?
Yeah, well, there's more adversarial version of Bob. So I was a trial lawyer for decades. And so you deal with, like, there's a lot of money. It's all about skyscrapers, and there's a lot of money changing hands between people. And I found myself to be I'm still a nice guy, but like very focused and intense. But I found that the best advocacy is a joyful heart. It's crazy. Like, you could have, all the right words, but if you've got all the wrong attitude, they're the wrong words.
Gosh.
And so that idea of not aiming to win arguments. There's actually a judge that wears a black cape and 12 jurors and 2 alternates. They're the ones you have to win an argument with, but not everybody else. And so sometimes I think that we do that with one another. We're trying to kind of win arguments, and it isn't good advocacy to raise your voice. First Peter, this idea of make a defense for the hope that's within you, but to do it with kindness and respect. You just get a lot more with honey than vinegar. I'm not saying blow sunshine at each other, but to be a vigorous advocate for something means be a great friend to people. Get to know a couple unschooled, ordinary people, like the kind Jesus said that he hung out with. Get to know a couple people in a position of power, and awesome things will happen.
That's so amazing. It's so refreshing. You talked earlier about the dog that you came in contact with, but how your perspective totally changes, and that's what you live out. Your perspective going into something, and that can change everything. It can change the outcome. It can change what you receive going through something. And how do you have that perspective? And when it can be so easily, even right now, it can be so easy to let the hard stuff that we've been going through in the past couple months, or just trials that we're going through, tragedy. How can we look at something that is coming towards us, like a scary dog or a trial that we're in? How can we look at it differently and think of it differently like you do?
Yeah, maybe it's understanding the context. So if I understood the context for this dog, that it was just a nice dog. We don't really have a neighborhood out here. We're surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of acres. I don't know where he came from. But the context could have been thought to be scary. And I think sometimes the context that we meet people in can be kind of off-putting or scary, because you just don't know, wow, if they're coming at you in leadership with a lot of passion behind something, if you could slow it down and understand the context first and then the message. People ask me sometimes for advice, and I go I haven't given anybody advice in 20 years, but I'll give them observations. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what I've experienced, what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've smelled. So people that want to give me advice, that usually isn't that helpful. If people tell me what they've experienced, I'm like, yeah, that's probably why Jesus said, come and see.
That's so good. Gosh.
Let's go experience this together rather than tell you all about it. I think that was probably part of God's big design, that we would understand context. He understood the context of everything he created, but that's usually what we lack, is context. Somebody's on edge, and then you find out the thing underneath that, and you go oh my gosh, I'd be on edge too. And you give them a little grace. Without knowing the context, you're just ricocheting off each other, and it just won't go well. So you get to control. I've taken, I don't know, 10,000 depositions over 35 years. But you get to control the questions that you ask and the answers that you give. Did you know, I'm sure you guys did, that Jesus asked 300 questions and he only answered 2?
Jeez.
Okay, that's amazing.
And that was in 3 years. So sometimes people ask me a question. I'm like, I already answered my 2 questions for this 3-year period.
That is so helpful. That's so good.
It seems like the dynamic as well from what, this new book, Dream Big, which I'm encouraging everybody to get.
Yes, do it.
You talk about some of the dynamics where your wife is protecting sort of even some of what your strengths create as weaknesses in terms of peace and just what you need at home. Like she's fighting for more the place of Selah and balance at home for your family, where you're just ready to continue going at 1,000 miles an hour.
Yes, very much. I'm that ever ready bunny. And that just comes from an insecurity born of being like young and trying to find validation in things. And I found the way I medicate my anxiety is activity. So
where even how you talked about how she released a book and, where you would have a book tour or go do a big event, she ordered a medium pizza and you guys had root beer floats because she just wanted to celebrate it with your safe space at home. So is that something where there's like tension sometimes? Because I think for a lot of people listening, maybe there is that similar dynamic of gifts and Enneagram personalities within a marriage, but as opposed to serving each other with those differences, they can be clashing at one another with those different ideas.
Yeah, there's ever a couple times she sent me, when I walked in the front door, she turned me around and sent me right back outside. And she said, do over.
Oh my gosh. Right, wrong tone, wrong spirit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, she'd make me knock on the door again.
I love that.
Right.
Because if you take the extreme of dream big and do this, you can let those dreams, lots of dreams have ruined marriages. Lots of dreams have like even the knowing like the space race, how many marriages of controllers at NASA ended during that dream. JFK said, we're getting there in a decade. And it was at the expense of a lot of families, controllers gone on Christmas. So, I mean, as you're telling people to dream big, you're not doing so at the expense of the most important things.
Yeah, I love that prayer where you get to kind of eavesdrop on Jesus talking to his dad in John 17. And he says, my prayer for them is that they would be one, just the way that you and I are one. And so for Marie and I, our objective isn't to be the same, it's to be one. Wow. But we can be one and be very different in how we express our oneness. She expresses that in just nurturing and loving the family. The people are within 9 feet of her. And so what we found is that when I travel to some of these schools where we are doing a couple things that we just don't talk about it. She just drops me off at the airport and I tell her I'll be back in a little bit. And we don't tell her where I'm going. I just call her every day.
So she doesn't know you're going to Iraq or going to Sudan or whatever. She just knows you're doing your thing. And that creates a safe space in your relationship, you're saying?
It does. Yeah.
Wow.
It's great. We're really picky about what we talk about. We just don't give a lot of oxygen to things that don't matter. We talk about our kids. We talk about how we're feeling. I told you I carry this mood ring around with me. I've been wearing this mood ring for like 10 years.
Oh my God.
And so she'll just ask me, what color's your ring?
Oh my
I go
gosh.
like, it's like kind of a little red. And she's like, how come? I want to say it's because I'm in Mazar al Sharif in Afghanistan, but I'll say, well, I'm just a little anxious.
Wow.
Talk about like those.
That's incredible.
Kids, and it's really fun. So we, I'm picky about what we talk about because I don't want to be married to a business partner. I don't want to be married to a travel agent. I want to be married to Sweet Maria.
Yeah, right.
So we're not trying to sync up. We're trying to be one.
Wow.
And so everybody expresses that differently. For some marriages, that'd be a train wreck. That would be a really bad idea to not talk about where you are. But for the people that ask Maria, where's Bob? She always says the same words. He's on his way home.
Yeah,
Is that beautiful?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And it's work. I mean, it's what works for you guys. You've been married for 34 years, and it's so beautiful because even what Levi started with of how much you have and what you do, and professor at Pepperdine and teaching at the prison, like just all of these things, but yet you have such a obviously rich relationship with your wife and with your kids, and you're just flourishing like on all parts of it. And it's so beautiful to see, and such an amazing example for us.
Well,
and
let me tell you about the other side. So realistically, that when we miscue, it's how we're learning how to deal with it. Because my immediate reaction as an advocate, when somebody is like in your grill about something, you go like, oh, is not working, whether it's for kids or witch doctors or whoever it is. Like, there's a strong advocacy thing. But with Sweet Maria Goff, I totally turtled. If I hurt her feelings, it's legs, tail, head, everything is in the shell. And so
that's Jennie.
So one of the things that's been helpful is to create safe spaces where you can just like put your legs back out, peek your head back out. Is it still safe? And that's what all of us get to do. We get to just be real about it, say, I feel myself turtling. Now she's like, no, you don't have to do that.
And what's her fighting style? How does she get to when she's triggered?
Oh, she gets pretty quiet. So I've in the it's been 37 years that I've been in love with her. She's been in love with me for 34. And she's never raised her voice or said a crossword. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
And it's not because for some people, that's a great way to express themselves, to raise their voice. They're just, very expressive. It's not a bad thing. But that's just not her. So she doesn't do that. She gets very quiet. So I need to create those safe places. She doesn't go out with friends too much to go like get a coffee or a donut or something, maybe once every several years, 5, 7.
Wow.
Yeah. So her world is our family, and we're just such big beneficiaries of that. And it gives us the freedom then to go do that. So my point is, be who God created you to be.
Yeah.
Just live into whoever that. If you're the Energizer bunny, go do that, but do it in a way that doesn't bug the people near you. Wow. I sing to Sweet Maria every single morning. And I'm no good.
Great.
Jeremy Camp can sing. He's got pipes, not so much me. And I keep telling her, she puts a pillow over her head, and I'm like, it's part of the platinum package. You got this song every day.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life.
She wants to know if she could downgrade to the silver package.
Wow.
That is so great.
We're not getting out of this thing.
Now, how did that work? Obviously, your kids are all out of the house now, but when they were right, they've all flown the nest.
Yeah, they all live about 2 miles away from us.
Okay, so when they were
amazing.
young, did you guys have a family day? Did you guys have like boundaries? Like, obviously your number's in the back of your book. People can call you, but there has to be date nights. And like, how does the practical push-pull of technology on your home, on your relationship, how does all that dynamic work when the whole world wants you?
Yeah, we really didn't do date nights. And the people that need, I just want to be available to somebody that needs somebody to talk to. And even if you're like listening, you got 2 people over here in the Luskos and you got me. And I just want us to not say we're a family and then not be, say we're a family and then not be available. So for our kids, when they were growing up, we really spent all of our time with them. We just all hung out as this posse. And then in the summers, I had this law firm in a couple places. And in Seattle, I walked in the front door of this law firm. I was on the 28th floor of this big high rise. And I walked in and the receptionist said, "Who are you here to see?" I said, "Oh, actually, that's my name, behind you." And I realized
it's like it's almost a Pretty Woman moment.
Yes. I hadn't been in my own office for almost a year. Because what I would do is I would fly to Seattle from San Diego on Alaska Airlines every day and then fly home for supper. So I very rarely would go to the office because there's nothing happening there. Like I won't be in court or wherever I needed to be. But the kids grew up knowing Dad would be home. And so there's something beautiful about that, to just remind ourselves that to just keep running home to one another.
Wow.
And I think that sometimes it's easy in the rush of life and business to forget the gift that is, that you don't need. It isn't going to be your accumulation or a bunch of initials behind your name. It's just knowing that you're home for dinner. And it just honors Maria. If at 6 p.m., I'm home. So she's really not interested in all the other details. Just, I'll see you at 6.
That's that proverb where it would be better to have a dinner of herbs where love is than have fatted calf, but in a house full of hatred. I think a lot of people are pursuing some version of a dream, whether it's an American dream or God's dream, that's to be decided at the end of our life, I guess, but at the expense of the people that are closest to them. And I think that's a really important message, that here you are, when you read your biography and you're like, oh, UN, speaking to the Republic of Uganda and this running this, you just can't, the image that is in a lot of people's heads is there's no way this guy's showing up for dinner at home. But you're saying you don't have to give up relationships at the expense of fulfilling some great sense of calling.
Yeah, maybe just returning to that idea of honoring one another. To honor people the way that Christ came to serve us, that something as simple as just when you walk into a room and a woman walks in, to just rise to your feet. They're just very honoring. It isn't that the women that I know wouldn't insist on that, but they'd feel very honored. Wouldn't you, Jen, if that happened to you?
Absolutely.
You just feel honored. Guys, if you're listening, that's half of Earth. You could honor them by just rising to your feet.
Oh my goodness.
One guy that's not sitting. And you don't have to make a big deal about it, but they'll figure it out. And I think there's just something beautiful in the things that we do, those small little ways that we could honor somebody by saying their name. But when you guys are, masters at that, just when you talk to people, say their name. There's something beautiful about that. Jesus either called people by their name, or he called them friend, or he called them brother or sister. Yeah. And so those are your three choices: friend, brother, sister, or their name.
Love that.
And if you don't know their name, don't give them a bunch of advice. And if you do know their name, don't give them a bunch of advice. Tell them what you've experienced. I go wow, that's crazy. Tell me some more context about that. So I get it. Life can be really hard in relationships. Tell me some context to that so I can understand. And they say, wow, when Maria and I were going in different directions and how we felt, we went to a place, a friend at a place called Onsite. We both went there for a thing to spend some time to say, hey, how could I honor my wife more? How could we have more things in common? And so to just find small things, we shared a car. I think I told you that, Levi, for, I don't know, more than a decade, a 2001 Suburban. And it was just junk. It's 6 inches deep in Cheetos. But the reason that we did it, we weren't trying to go green. We just wanted more things in common. And it was just another way to connect, because I felt like I was self-sufficient enough. I could have somebody give me a lift somewhere, and I could move all over the place. I just liked talking to Maria about how we were going to get from here to there and who's going to pick up the mail.
That's so amazing. I love that so much.
Now, with your kids, every time they turn 10, you would allow them to take a trip just with you two. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yes. So as each kid, we called it the 10-year-old adventure. And if you're listening, you have a 20-year-old, I'm telling you, take them on 2 adventures. But when Lindsay turned 10, every time British Airways opened up a new route, they would charge $50 one-way tickets to London. And I eat like $60 of peanuts. And so we bought tickets to London because she wanted to go to high tea. And so we did it. We had an overnight there, and we flew back. It cost me $100 plus high tea, which is probably
$150 a head. Yeah, right.
Exactly. So, but it doesn't have to be expensive. You could call somebody up if you want for your adventure. Richard wanted to climb Half Dome, not the front, the back. And
did you free solo?
Yeah, totally.
No ropes.
It would be easy enough to climb up the backside of Half Dome in the summer when everybody goes. So we went in the middle of the winter when a snowstorm was coming.
Oh my gosh.
We took 24 hours. We left San Diego. We drove through the night. We got to Half Dome. We hiked through a couple feet of snow. It was awesome. So we got to the top of this thing. And then Adam wanted to ride motorcycles across the desert, which seemed like a particularly bad idea as we're like passing all these skeletons.
He was 10 years old riding a motorcycle?
Yeah.
So were you on one motorcycle? Because you said plural.
No, we got dirt bikes. Yeah, it was awesome.
He was on his own motorcycle.
Yes, and then when the boys were a little bit older, we got Harleys, and we started in Mexico, and we drove across North America. And that was the first time we'd ever been on the highway. the goal was to like learn how to change gears on the way. So we got on I-5 and just started going north.
Oh my goodness.
So that kind of idea, but you can do the same thing. If you're listening, pitch a tent with your kids in your living room tonight.
Right.
Like that's where the awesome stuff
Absolutely.
is. They'll remember that. Bury a pickle jar with some things that you want to remember in it. One of the things that I do everywhere I go, don't let the kids listen to this podcast. Everywhere I go, I bury a pickle jar with notes from me to them. So there's notes in deserts, in countries where there's a lot of civil wars going on, and
To the people that are there that will find it later, like a time capsule?
for my kids.
For your
Yes.
kids.
Yeah, so I have a little iPhone and I get the latitude and longitude, and attached to my will is all the latitude and longitude of all the notes I've passed them.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
I just want them to go together and find them all at like one lap. Like,
These are
Wow.
from you to your children in Uganda or in wherever?
oh, everywhere. They're all over there. They're in the desert in Somalia.
See,
They're
this
in
is why I said you intimidate me. So backstory on that comment. When I went, the first time I heard the words Bob Goff used in the same sentence, I was in England and I was speaking at a conference, and they said last year, my host, the guy who's driving me around, picked me at the airport, nice guy named, I think, Alex, he said, last year, I hosted Bob Goff. And I go, Bob Goff, who's that? He goes, oh, he's a lawyer, and he's a freedom fighter, and he's a bullfighter, and he does balloons. He blows up balloons. And I go, wow, that's great. What was it like hosting him? He goes, oh, it was magnificent. He made me pull over at a hardware store and made me buy him car washing utensils. And when we got to the conference, he went to the parking lot of the car, where the car park was, where the cars were coming in, and washed all the cars of the people coming in, then found 10 lepers and washed their feet. And he goes, can I get you anything? I was like, I don't know, a Big Mac? I'm hungry. And I felt like he looked at me like, you are the most disappointing person. I could actually see him the next year telling the story about hosting me and saying that I was the Antichrist. And I'm like, I'm listening to you. Do you bring the pickle jars with you when you go? Do you buy them in advance? Do you find a local pickle jar? Like,
Oh,
yeah.
you're like
So-
Jesus in a Boston Red Sox hat.
it's true. I love it.
I'm sure Jesus was a 7. I've been reading the scriptures. I'm convinced. But one of the
Well, he
things-
is. It's 7 spirits before the throne of God. What are you talking
There
about?
you
Of
go,
course
man.
he's a 7.
So what I want to do is leave some evidence behind that we were actually here. My only connection to Montana is that I had a great-grandfather who evidently was a sheriff there. And that's everything I know about him. A great-grandfather was evidently a sheriff somewhere in Montana. And I've got a nickel that's older than him, and it was like he intended to not exist.
Wow.
And I'm not saying you need to put your face, in South Dakota on one of these cliffs, but what if instead you leave some evidence? You two are leaving some beautiful evidence that you're here in the books that you're writing, the stories you're telling. I want to leave some stuff behind. And so being intentional about that, and then always living this life, having big plans for yourself, but bigger plans for the people that you love. Like I've got all these things that I don't talk about because I want the kids to be surprised when they find out about it much later. They go like, oh my gosh. So somebody told me, they said Jesus, Bob, when he was hanging on the cross, he was thinking about you. And I think it's a beautiful picture. I don't know if it's true, but it's a beautiful picture. But I don't want my kids wondering if I was thinking about them.
Wow.
And so I've been doing some things maybe once a week for my kids to let them know in 30 seconds or less, I'm thinking about you. This is what I'm, and there's no creepy introductory video that says, if you're watching this, I'm
my
dead.
God.
Like it's
Like
just
the Michael Keaton My Life movie.
Yes. Yeah, I just want them to know that the day that I go missing, like capital M, it's just going to be a lot of confusion and sadness and all that. And then my friends are going to start carpet bombing them with 20 years of videos.
Jeez.
And I just think to just go, I just want my kids. I don't tell them what to do. I tell them who they are.
Okay, that's
And I-
Wow. That is
key.
so beautiful and so helpful. I'm just being so encouraged and so blessed by now.
She's like crying.
now.
I would say this, you're probably not going to die. My theory on Bob Goff is it's going to be like Enoch. One day your hat's just going to flutter to the ground and it's going to be like, Bob Goff was, and then the Lord took him. For as he walked with the Lord, a chariot shall come with Master, the horsemen of Israel. Bob Goff is gone. That's what's going to happen. Then I'm going to grab your hat and I'm going to smack the river, and it's not going to part. And they're going to say, we knew Bob and we knew Paul, but who the heck are you?
Yes, exactly. That's kind of like I right out of the Seven Sons of Sceva, huh? So what we're doing right now,
We mixed a bunch of Bible stories together. Rick.
Yeah, I know.
But Don, before you move on, what you just said about your kids, I think a lot of people listening want to raise independent kids, but are also trapped in the cultural vortex of the helicopter parenting. So how do you manage that tension of giving your kids enough slack to make the wrong decisions, but also the oversight to understand who they are? Talk to us about that, releasing kids into their calling.
We have these traditions, and I know you guys are rich in traditions in your family as well. When the kids
Taco Bell on Saturday, stuff like that.
No, but like it'll be the small things that your kids will remember. They're going to pass on to their grandkids, and they'll be doing 10-year-old adventures because that's the way they were raised. All those things. When our kids reached a certain age, we would put them, there's a little island, and we'd put them in a little boat, and we would have them circumnavigate the island. Now, this island is probably, 200 yards across, and it's round. And we have them leave, and they take the trip around the island all alone. And then they come back to where they started.
Sailboat?
Yeah, solo. And so we have them, it's in an enclosed area so they can't get away from us. But there's something beautiful about that, kind of like, it's kind of like you're giving, a little bit more rope to your kids until at some point you give them the other end. And I think the giving at the other end is what's happening now. They're all just a little short of 30s. But there's something beautiful, and it's a little unnerving as parents to see them disappear around the bend. But you have a lot of trust. And I swear these kids would leave like 6 years old and come back 32. I think that for as many times as we're able, we try to create safe circumstances to do that, but to exercise some latitude. So you can put up some beautiful guardrails in your life. You can put these for your children, the people that you love, but then say everywhere within these guardrails. It was John 6:29, the disciples are saying, like, so what's our job? Like, what are we supposed to do? And your work is to believe in the one God sent. So here are the beautiful guardrails. Eyes fixed on Jesus. And then within that, just like, go be a lawyer, write books, don't write books, cut grass, whatever it is, whatever blows your hair back, whatever gets you closer to your work was to believe in the one God sent. And so I just want to take lots of notes along the way. I've learned a ton from you guys. I was actually jumping on on this podcast, and Stephanie and her husband are up here working, and you guys have been really a big influence in their lives. So fun for you to know somebody that works for me. They go like, oh, wow, you're like going to be talking to them. Will you please tell them how much they've impacted me? And so I think that's why heaven is going to take so long to make it for eternity. We're just going to be telling stories about how we impacted one another, places where we saw Jesus in one another. And we just need to learn that some of these people, I haven't found any scripture for this. It would really help me out if you guys could. But I have this suspicion that whoever in this family of God we couldn't get along with here on earth, God will make us roommates in heaven. We can be arguing about the top bunk for eternity.
Oh my gosh. That's so good.
I'm torn. I want to stay on parenting for a second, only because, we're in the thick of it with our 14-year-old, but we did a similar thing with sending her down a paddleboard up a river. She had to go on the series of challenges, and we made her go into Safeway and buy someone's groceries that she didn't know, stuff like that, to try and develop some core values. But I think it really is hard, because you want as a parent to tell your kids what to do, but you need to help them develop the grit by just telling them who they are and then giving them the space to fail.
Wow.
Yes. And if somebody makes a mistake, there was a thing in Seattle I was supposed to say something at, and having commuted every day for 25 years there, I knew how to get there from the airport. And the guy that picked me up made the wrong, he got on the wrong exit. He went south instead of north. And so I just didn't say anything. I thought, more time to talk.
Wow.
And then I figured out he'd realize it, some this side of Portland, he'd figure out he'd turn the wrong way. And he got off and he said, well, did you know we were going the wrong way? I'm like, well, of course. But there's something beautiful if we don't feel like we're there. Our job is to be the umpire calling balls and strikes. What we are, we're base coaches. We're just tell people when to run and when to hold. And just say, like, if you want to try to steal the base, mazel tov. But my experience has been that doesn't work out that great for you or the team that you're playing for. But do whatever seems like a really good idea. Now, some people will cringe at that. But I would just check what's the return address. Sometimes what we try to do is control what God created. And
Wow.
God created people, and I don't think our job is to try to control the people he created.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Amen.
When it comes to leadership and influencing people, you have a pretty sizable team around you. How many people would be direct reports to you as opposed to being, maybe further down the organizational chart?
Yeah, well, we're pretty flat in terms of the org chart. We have maybe 400 teachers spread out over however many, 7 countries, I think. In San Diego, we have a couple of people. We have a really neat deal when somebody gets pregnant, which I'm super big on like my family, anybody's family. I'm such a share. We just don't say like you get so many weeks off. You can have as long as you want off and I'll still pay you. You can stay home for the rest of your life if you want.
And work from home
Nope.
or are you saying not work at all?
Raise your kids. You can do whatever you want. And so what's been really beautiful is that everybody's in on that and they feel like they're just doing a great job. They're like working to help like make it happen for people. And so when there's no big event, when somebody comes back, they just pop back in and I'll get an email saying your flight's at 3. I'm like, oh, wow, they're back.
Oh, you're back.
And it could be like a long time, but we just are creating our own economy. We want to do that differently. Not that it's bad, but I'm not going to let the government decide for me how many weeks somebody has off.
Wow.
What I'm going to do is let their heart decide how many weeks they have off. Now that might create some chaos, but I'm not a guy trying to control it all.
Yeah.
And so I've found that that's actually works out really beautiful, but it's not that doing it a different way is in a bad way. It's just, I
had
decided.
heard Netflix did something like that, where if you worked at Netflix, there was no set vacation time. You took as much as you wanted and they trusted that the people were going to take what they needed and, not abuse it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, people just really rise to so we're so much in this flat org chart. We're just like in it. We're just, we wrote Love Does, what was it, 7 or 8 years ago. And so everybody, like we're still funding the schools from the book. And so everybody knows why we're doing what we're doing. And I would say that would be a positive thing to do with it within your family, to say this is why we're doing what we're doing. We don't talk about finances a lot around our family, but I let the kids and Sweet Maria know once a year, like there's a piece of paper, like here it is. If I go missing, you just call this person. And no doubt there'll be some big changes. They probably have to sell some stuff, and that's fine.
In order to have a kind of culture that you're describing, though, it seems like you need the right people on the bus, to use a Collins metaphor, right? So like
Yes.
the hiring, the systems, figuring out who, because obviously a few people abusing something like that ends up ruining it for everybody. So how have you over the years gotten better at picking the right people?
You know what I did? I switched to 1-year agreements. At this law firm, we operated at 1 year at a time for almost 30 years. So the partnership agreement, can you imagine how big an agreement would be with a bunch of lawyers? We were 1 page and it said, it's my law firm and it's all over December 31st. Sell the furniture.
Oh.
And so
Every year that would restart.
Yeah. Every year we get together about January 3rd and I go like, do we want to do this again? And if somebody was being kind of squirrely, then we'd say like, I think we're going to reform the law firm and you're just not going to be in it. And with Sweet Maria,
is that how the organization still runs to this day? The Love Does?
Yeah, right until I gave the key to the law firm to a guy. I told him, you don't owe me anything. It's all yours. And I walked away. Haven't gone back. It's been 5 years. And he was so stoked. He's like, Like I get everything for nothing. I'm like, yeah, it's all yours. Now that's
Wow.
a stupid economic decision, but it's an awesome new creation decision.
Right.
Wow.
And I think what God has his eyes on for all of us is to be new creations. And it wasn't because we had a bunch of cash in the bank. We'd actually given it all away to start all these schools. So Maria and I were in a real crack, which is awesome. That's a great place to be. I would say don't let just calamity be the thing that gets you there. You could actually aim on being downwardly mobile. Like I'm just like aiming to just divest this stuff between now and when I go missing. And then so long as there's enough money for the kids to get a ticket to find all my pickle jars, we're good. So that wouldn't be
I
the
love
right
that
thing.
they're specifically pickle jars.
Yes.
Pickle jars.
Not peanut butter, not mayonnaise. They're
No, I
all
just had a
pickle
whole
jars.
conversation with our almost 10-year-old Daisy, who said she loves pickles, and but it's just so funny how that's just a specific thing for you. She would love that. Be on a journey for pickle jars.
Oh yeah, she
Yeah,
would
so
love it.
you'll be just fine. Some people collect bottle caps, but there's something beautiful, the traditions that you two have created in your home already. Just continue to do that. These are in the faith traditions. Some of the traditions became automatic, but everybody forgot the origins of the tradition. I love entomology to find the origins of a word, like where did that come from? Gilding the lily, I was looking up this morning, and for no particular reason, I just like, where in the world did that come from? I've heard the phrase before. And so to be curious and have one of the traditions is that if you hear a word or a phrase, an idiom that you haven't heard before, look it up. Say, where did that come from? And I know our kids just do that same. And it's not because we're dorky. We're just curious.
I love it.
Bob, when it comes to mulligans and regrets, as you think about your life, like where would there be do-overs you wish you could go back? Or if you were given some mulligans for the past, where would you want to use them on?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I thought of with this Puritan work ethic that I was raised in is that the way I could express love to my family was by productivity. And to work hard and head down and get on the next plane and all that. And I've realized that the best way for me to express that is presence.
Oh my gosh.
And not just in proximity to one another, but actually being present with one another. So there's a lot of us that are in proximity, but we're, on an iPhone or we're doing something else. So I bought a clincher. It's a big baseball. You ought to get one. They made them during the Depression. It looks like a mega softball. And Sweet Marie and I just play catch with it. They made these clinchers, the origins of that. They made it in the Depression because nobody could afford mitts. And so it was big enough to catch without a mitt, but it was soft enough that nobody could hit a home run. I'm like, that'll preach.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
gosh.
Yeah. So what if we just
That's
said,
incredible.
everybody gets to catch this? Nobody's going to hit a home run. I'm not trying to dazzle anybody but Jesus.
My
But I
gosh.
want to bring all the game I've got, like all the enthusiasm, all the whatever, however I was wired. I'm not thinking of this as a reservoir. I'm thinking of it as a river.
Wow.
So
Man.
Well, this conversation's been
beautiful.
amazing, and I'd want it to go on forever, but I want to be mindful of your time because you have places to go and things to do. And yet I have to mention that the part of Dream Big that really touched me as I got to the end of it was Craig and Kelly's story.
yes.
I won't spoil it for those who haven't read it yet. Obviously, as this goes out, there's people have had a chance to read it, but those who haven't heard it, I don't want to ruin it for them. But the conversation of organ transplant is real challenging for us because when Linya went to heaven, we were able to give her heart valves and her corneas, and we've tried on several occasions. We were able to write letters. But we have not been able to have an ongoing dialogue with the people who received her corneas, who now see. There's 2 blind people that received sight when she went to heaven. But that really touched me and really encouraged me a lot. Just knowing that still that day could come, for that kind of a moment where we would love to get to spend time in person with the people who now see through our daughter's eyes.
Yes. Oh, man. And sometimes those things, you just say, what are my deep desires? And boy, keep track of that stuff. Go Deuteronomy 5, like just to write these things down and these promises of God, put them in the little box, make them frontals. It isn't just the box you got, it's the promises that are in the box that you want to have it this much of your recall right here, right? Wrap it on your hand. to just be aware of those things. And it comes from Philippians, this idea of making your requests known to God. And you can't make them requests known to God if they're not known to yourself. So to say, you know what, God, this continues to be our heart's desire. And it's my heart's desire for you as well.
Yeah, because I mean, I understand, and I feel, because when we actually, Good Morning America wanted to do a thing where they would bring us together, and we'd worked with a producer for a while where we were willing, and they reached through the organization to them. And I understand it would be a lot of maybe that survivor's guilt, and that it would be hard for them to face that. So I completely understand that maybe they weren't ready early on. So I'm with you on just believing there's a day that's going to come for a mountaintop moment, kind of like that, you know?
There's something about that where you wouldn't have thought. We're from this place where I'm sitting right now. Sweet Maria and I met 38 years ago.
Wow.
We came up and were working. She was going to bring work crew girls, so I brought work crew guys. And the first night, an elderly woman with a pacemaker had stopped, and she went like full face in the spaghetti. She was just gone. And I knew how to do CPR. And so after 30 minutes, we got this gal going, and Sweet Maria actually learned my name. And she was thinking, he's not much to look at, but he could be helpful in a pinch. And so to come full circle, what I wanted to be is on staff with this outfit that had a big camp and all these different places. And they said no. And I thought my dream was like sidelined. But so I bought the forest a little bit at a time around there. And the short version is last year we traded the forest for this camp where Maria and I met. And so I got one of those delayed things, which is really hard for a 7. If you've got some 7 leanings, you're like, no. So I just hope for you that time will come where you'll inexplicably receive a phone call from somebody to say, I saw you. And then you think it's going to go the direction that all the other conversations went. And then you go like, no, I saw you. You're like, wow, I want you to live in anticipation.
Yeah, come on.
Beautiful.
Well, the name of your second book is, I think, so fitting and so appropriate because you have given so many of us an example of what it does look like to love everybody always. And it's an incredible thing. So thank you for the way that you're an example and a template, even a little intimidating to some of us who...
In the best way.
In the best possible way.
I'm going to be in the back of that cab and say, like, I met this couple.
Yeah. No, but it's
you know them.
It's truly, you are a gift to the world from God to all of us. So thank you for the way you live your life so magnificently.
I'm just so glad we're all in this together, aren't you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Every family has a nutty uncle and a lawyer in it, and I'm both.
That is really funny. Well,
so great.
All right.
Any parting words from you, Jen?
Well, I just want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time with us.
Thanks.
And would you just maybe take a moment and just pray for the person listening who just needs that just touch from God? We'd love that.
We've never done that on this podcast before.
Come
this
on.
is a big first.
Bring it. And we have a tradition at my house that we look at each other when we pray, because I want to give thanks for the people right in front of me. So Jesus, thank you for these two right in front of me. Thanks for the people that are listening in. My prayer is that you would take some truth from what's been said and you'd make it alive, that they'd check it against Scripture, they'd make sure it's true, and they would incorporate it in their life if it is. So we acknowledge your authority over us. Give us the guts and the grit to just be who you made us to be. In your strong name, amen.
Amen.
Bob, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thanks, you guys. All right, come
Have
down
the best day.
Thanks,
We will.
you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.